right, so we're close to a couple of minutes after 11:30, so we'll get rolling. I'd like to say good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us in Rumsey's ongoing webinar series hosted by our product specialists. My name's Sean Huber. I'm one of the Automation Systems Group's managers here at Rumsey Electric. Today we have our industrial control, safety, and sensor specialists teaming up to discuss the topic around essential components and their use in automation and automation cabinets. Many of the products that you see here will be based on the essential components catalog that hopefully many of you have seen that Rockwell prints, and many of the things that are in that particular catalog are needed for a successful cabinet design. And with that, I will turn this over to Joe Lamonaco, who's one of our industrial control, safety, and sensor specialists who resides in our Bethlehem office. So take it over, Joe.
All right, thanks, Sean. You can hear me?
Sure can.
All right, so here's the agenda. So we're going to start with power components. I'll be doing these. We're going to go over some new overloads, snap together starters, circuit breakers, disconnects, and soft starts. And then Will Halley's going to take over, and he's going to do the logic components, which consists of electronic circuit protection, power supplies, surge and filters, signal conditioners, intrinsic barriers, push button stack lights. And then Donna Wyatt's going to take over for the end and get connectivity and sensors. She'll be talking about terminal blocks, wiring systems, a new sensor selection tool, and then several new sensors as well. So Sean said, my name is Joe Lamonaco, and I cover the Bethlehem Lehigh Valley area supporting industrial controls, sensors, and safety. All right, so start with overload. So here is an overview of Allen Bradley's overload portfolio. So start with the basic, the bimetal overload, very simple, straightforward. And then we have electronic overload. So the E100, that's the new overload that was recently released. We have the E200 and then the E300, which we'll also be discussing as well. So the E100, this will be replacing the E1 Plus. So the E1 Plus has been a great overload for us. It's been around for almost 20 years now, but that will be phased out, going obsolete in the near future. So the E100 will be the overload going forward, and that will be mounting to the same 100C contactors that the E1 Plus mounts directly to. And they are both the same physical size as well. So should be a easy swap. One of the differences in the new E100 is the same unit can be used for single phase or three phase applications, where the E1 Plus, there was two different units for that. And the E100, there's two versions of it. There's a basic and an advanced. So the basic will mainly do 90–95% of applications. It has two trip classes, a 10 and a 20 trip class. It is only a manual reset. But again, this will be used most of the time. The advanced version gives you availability to some extra add-on modules. So with the advanced version, you can use an electronic remote reset. You can use the ground fault module. And there's also a jam module as well that can be used with that. And it offers automatic reset as well. And also, you can see here in the picture on the bottom, there's a panel mount unit that can be used with the advanced as well. So that has some LEDs on it. It can give you the status of the overload, and you can also reset it remotely with that panel mount unit as well. The direct mount overloads will go up to 100 amps. And then if you need something larger, all the way up to 800 amps, we can achieve that, but we need to use current transformers with it. Okay, the E300. So this is kind of like the Cadillac, if you will, of the overloads here. So it's an advanced electronic overload. And in this unit, there are over 500 parameters that can be used. So that might sound overwhelming, not that you have to use all of them, but there's a lot of data and diagnostics at your disposal, and it can do a broad range of applications. So I just want to highlight a few of the features that come along with this. So one of them is the % TCU. So that stands for thermal capacity utilization. So when we think about overloads, a lot of times we think about current, and higher amperage is not a good thing. But what really destroys the motors is actually the heat that the higher amperage causes. So what this overload can do, it has a calculation that it does, looks at what your full load amps should be, let's say 5 amps. And if the motor is running at 7, 8, 9, 10 amps, it does this calculation and gives you a percentage of thermal capacity that is used up. So what makes this powerful is because this is a networked overload, we can get that data, pull it out, and display it. So with that percent TCU, we now know exactly when this overload is going to trip, and we can get it down to the second. So as soon as it hits 100% TCU, we know it's going to trip. So as we can set up alerts at 90%, at 95%, to alert maintenance or to alert the operator, let them know that we're coming up to an issue and it needs to be dealt with. So this could be the difference between keeping the line running or having unplanned downtime. So this is a powerful feature. Some other things that it can do is energy monitoring. So this can look at the power coming in, the energy consumption, and if you have some big motors or some critical motors, and you want to be able to look at that data, see where you're using most of your energy, trying to be more efficient, this overload can help you do that. Another feature is ADC, which stands for Automatic Device Configuration. So you may be familiar with this in some of the other Allen Bradley products. They've been using this. This can be very powerful if this overload happens to fail at 2 o'clock in the morning on third shift. What this feature does, it takes all those parameters that you have programmed into it, it stores it on the controller in the PLC. So if it were to fault out or go bad, it can be replaced, put a new overload in, and then the controller will recognize that and push out all the parameters to the new overload, and you're up and running again. So that can be very helpful. Another feature is device logics. So basically this is like a mini PLC being placed in this unit, gives you some programming function in it. And this overload also has I/O, embedded I/O in it, and then you can also have additional input and outputs as well. So you kind of combine that with device logics, and you can get pretty creative with different applications doing some different things. And then, as you mentioned, it is on Ethernet. It's a networked overload, so that just gives you the ability to pull out all of this data, all this information, and make it useful for you. And the Studio 5000 add-on profile already has a lot of the configuration engineering done for you, just to help with the installation on it. So here, this is a screenshot of a faceplate for that E300. So this faceplate is already pre-engineered, pre-designed by Rockwell. And this enables you to pull out all that data that we were talking about here. So you see some clear green lights that kind of tell you the status of the overload, tell you the status of the inputs and outputs. You also have a chart here that kind of trends the full load amps, and then also can trend your percent of thermal capacity. And then on the top right there, you see the actual thermal capacity being displayed. Here it says 23%, so no problems there. But as that continues to climb, so we could set alerts up, and then right underneath that, we have the estimated time to trip. So again, just very powerful. The fact that all this engineering is already done for you, you combine this with the add-on profile, and it just helps to make for a quick installation for a pretty high-tech overload. So here we have snap together starters. So what Rockwell did when they released this, they gave an innovative upgrade to some product that has been around for a long time. It's well known. Enclosed starters, combination starters, a lot of people use them. And this was a nice upgrade to help with installation and replacement of parts. So on the right here, you see the plug-in module. And this plug-in module comes already pre-installed inside the enclosure with the contactor and disconnect. And this is color-coded. And the parts that you would plug into it are also color-coded. So if you need any auxiliaries, if you need a start-stop push button, HOA, selector switch, pilot light, whatever the application calls for, you can get those parts, and it's just plug and play. It takes about just a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, and you've got yourself a combination starter. So this is different. Nobody in the industry is doing this right now. On top of the color code, the pilot lights and switches, the plugs are keyed for a very specific way. And you can, I don't know if you can see in the picture there, but the plugs themselves are also keyed what it plugs into. So it just helps reduce any wiring errors and just to make sure it's all plugged in correctly. So this goes across all the IEC starters, NEMA starters, and soft starts. NEMA starters we can do up to 150 horsepower, and soft starts up to 400 horsepower. So Rumsey is stocking these as well with the parts to go with them. And then one other thing that Allen Bradley did when they released these snap together starters, they also put these RCC centers, which is a regional configuration center. So they have a couple of these across North America. They're stocking a lot of these parts as well. So if you're looking for a starter and Rumsey doesn't have it in stock, we can go back to the factory. They're stocking these, and they guarantee that they're out the door in 48 hours. So as long as it's a standard offering. And here on the enclosure here, here's a picture of what comes in the enclosure. This is the installation, and you just see there, everything is lettered and numbered and plugged in a certain way, just for the push buttons and the pilot lights and auxiliaries and things like that. So it's relatively easy. It's just plug and play. Okay, 140G molded case circuit breakers. So 8 different frame sizes up to 3,000 amps. And we can get some of them up to 150 Ka interruption rating. There's also current limiting available. So the H frame at 125 amps, the J frame at 250 amps, and the K frame at 400 amps can all be ordered with current limiting capabilities. And the many accessories that you're used to, flange mounted disconnects, terminal lugs, rotary handles through the door, flex cable, all of those things are available. And for specific motor load applications, there's a 140MG. So if you're familiar with the 140Ms, they go up to about 45 amps. And then the 140MGs will take over from there and go all the way up to 1200 amps for motor applications. The 194U disconnect. So this is relatively new. This is a non-fused disconnect. You can get it in 3-pole, 4-pole. It has your rotary handles there, and then an NFPA 79 compliant internal handle that can be used with lockout tagout. It's compact, panel savings. What makes this important is that it has 2 UL ratings, UL 98 and UL 508. So this can be used as a feeder disconnect for the panel, and it can also be used as an app motor disconnect as well. So comes also with your accessories and terminal shrouds, auxiliary contacts. And we're stocking these as well. And the soft starters. So here's an overview of the soft start family. So we have the SMC3, which is your basic soft start, up to 37 amps. It's only 45 millimeters. So that's smallest in the industry. But it's a basic soft start. It is configured with dip switches and a rotary dial. It does have an internal bypass contactor. We have the SMC Flex, kind of middle of the road. That comes with the HIM module mounted on it, and that as well has an internal bypass contactor. And then we have the SMC 50. So SMC 50, when it was released several years ago, was only a solid state unit. So that would be used in heavy duty applications like rock crushers. But they just released not too long ago an SMC 50 with an internal bypass contactor as well. And here's just an overview of the different features and kind of where they all stack up with each other. So the SMC3, again, as that being basic, that has 4 different starting and stopping modes. The SMC Flex has some different control modules, a pump control and a braking control, but there's 8 different starting and stopping modes with the Flex. And then the SMC 50, that being the high end, has 10 different starting modes, 4 different stopping modes, and 4 different braking modes. So that being most capable. And then you see there on the right the different features. And again, the SMC 50 kind of standing out from the other 2. So that's it for me, and Will Halley's going to take over.
Hi guys, so like Joe said, my name is Will Halley. I am a specialist here at Rumsey Electric as well, and today I'll be covering the logic as well as some operator interface components. So the first product we're going to go over is the 1694 modular electronic circuit protector. And just to start off, we'll kind of go over what this device is. It essentially performs the same basic function as a fuse or a mini circuit breaker, but with a few key advantages. So ECPs, or electronic circuit protectors, which we'll refer to as ECPs from here on out, are more sensitive. So electronic components are more sensitive than traditional electromechanical ones. And most fuses and mini circuit breakers were designed with AC in mind, and they can leave power supplies and other 24-volt components exposed, causing unexplained trips and damaged parts. So the 1694 takes a modular approach to solving these issues. And essentially, in that previous slide, you saw you're going to select a power feed module, a protection module for your individual loads, as well as a distribution module. So the 3 key things that the ECP does is it acts as a class 2 power source, which basically is a current limited power source. If you have devices like PLCs, networking switches, sensors, some safety interlocks, various devices require a class 2 power source, and the ECP has the ability to limit the power going to those devices that require it and meet that classification. And you can, with an ECP, you can feed multiple class 2 loads from a single setup. Additionally, they have multicolor status indicators, allowing for fast diagnosis of problems. So here you see green, all the loads are connected, yellow for a 90% load capacity, and red for disconnected or tripped loads. If you go to the next slide, it will show you that we also have the ability to connect these via IO link, and you can get that data out of the panel, feed it up to a PLC or any other kind of maybe an HMI, so you can get that visibility outside of the panel. You can set up alerts for when these trip. And really, it's a cool new product that provides a new way to protect those 24-volt components versus traditional means. And this is really something that's different from any other product on the market right now in terms of its modularity. So here you can kind of see, this is kind of a slide, but hopefully it illustrates what something like this could help you do. You have your 24-volt coming in off your power supply, being fed into the power feed, going out to the individual loads, which are the 4 sensors there at the bottom. And then you can also have distribution models to really branch this out and scale it. So you could feed a lot of different devices, and it's completely modular. So you could set it up however you want it, really, and really protect those loads better than you would with either a fuse or a mini circuit breaker from both short circuits and overloads. So the next product we're going to go over are some power supply updates. The 1606 XLE, which is a very popular power supply, recently had what they're calling a trade dress update. And essentially this was a global standardization effort to update to conform to some standards that put some new requirements on power supplies in terms of their external appearance. One of the things was that you couldn't have any sharp edges. There's some additional flammability and insulation testing that was done, and Rockwell took this time to also add several key advantages. One of those is that there are now more termination options, so you can have like a plug or removable spring push-in terminals like you see in that bottom left-hand corner there versus just a standard screw terminal. And additionally, there are several new redundancy modules available as well, and some DC to DC converters. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see a difference. On the left-hand side is what the power supplies used to look like. On the right-hand side is what they would look like now. This was just a series change, so it wasn't anything really functional other than making them a better product. On the left-hand side, the XLB for the basic power supply and the XLP for the compact power supply still have that older look, but still have the same functionality. It's strictly an appearance thing for the most part. So the XLB, they expanded that product line from just having 120 and 240 watt versions to now having them down to 36 watts and up to 480 watts. Essentially what this is a cost-effective solution for basic needs. It's still a really high quality power supply with good efficiency. It has a DC OK contact and really anything you would need for a basic power supply. Yeah. And here just a quick update on our UPS offering. We have two options, the 1609B and the D. These are essentially just good power supplies that we stock here at Rumsey, and we have the ability to expand these with additional batteries if you have larger power need requirements, as well as connect these via Ethernet, and also integrate these with an add-on profile, as Joe mentioned, on the E300. So you can tie this up into a PLC or scale it in software and get data out of it. So now we're going to move on to the 4983 bulletin of products, which are surge and power quality products. So the 4983DS is a surge protection product. They have a compact modular design, so you can get these from anywhere to a single pole or a 4-pole device with a visual fault indicator. So you could know remotely when the ability to protect has exceeded its lifespan. So if it gets hit with a surge, you may need to replace this, and that will give you the ability to know that's a requirement now. And essentially, these, we stock these here at Rumsey, and they are available on short notice. There are some new changes to the NEC that have added some additional requirements to using surge protective devices. So here's an example of how one of these would be used with some interlocks or safety switches. Essentially, it would go before the power supply, and it would protect those components from a surge. Typically, Rockwell and anyone who manufactures these would promote a cascaded approach, which means you would have various surge devices upstream all the way to downstream in the panel, protecting those individual loads. You want to make sure that you have the ability to clear that surge when it hits from various angles. And moving on, these are the filter devices. So essentially, if you have poor power quality or you have transients coming into your panel, those can damage sensitive electrical components or electronic components, I'm sorry. And these can really take that power in and make sure that it's clean. We stock these here at Rumsey as well. Moving on, we'll get into signal conditioning. So essentially, signal conditioners are taking in, most of the time, an analog signal or some other type of signal, and then converting it to another easier to transport signal. So you can use these to take a 4 to 20 signal in and clean that up and send it out to a PLC, or you can reduce the cable runs of something like a thermocouple wire, and really provide cost savings. If we go to the next slide, we'll see that we have a variety of these, and the newest version is the nano version, which is an ultra thin signal converter. And essentially, it's going to provide all the functionality of something that in the past had taken up more panel space. And these are really a high quality product. And here's an example. I kind of briefly touched on this, but if you had a thermocouple wire going in into the signal conditioner, you could then on the output use lower cost copper wire and carry that as either a 0 to 5 or 10 volt signal or a 4 to 20 back to the PLC instead of using a costly thermocouple wire. And the next slide will show how they could eliminate ground loops. So you would take that 4 to 20 into the signal converter and you would make sure it's clean, prevent the PLC or the input card from getting hit with any kind of ground loop that could potentially take it out. So now we'll move on to intrinsic safety modules. Essentially, these are easy ways to interface with devices in hazardous locations. Kind of to take a step back, for a device in a hazardous location needs three things. It needs air, oxygen, a flammable substance to cause an ignition, and then a spark or a source of the ignition. And essentially what we're doing with these devices is we are taking out the ability to cause a spark. So essentially, an intrinsically safe circuit should not be capable of causing any kind of ignition during normal operations. And it's essentially we want to keep the energy to a minimum. And additionally, they can convert or condition signals, just like the previous ones that we showed, the 931. They can perform that same function, but in a hazardous location. And also, these can provide a significant cost savings over traditional methods, which would be a large bolted NEMA 7.9 enclosure or a purge or pressurization kit. And a cool feature that Rockwell has is that when using their ProposalWorks configurator tool, you can come up with an entire intrinsic safe system. So you could find the barrier that you need, as well as the components you need, whether those are safety switches, sensors, or maybe like a push button station, and it'll give you a complete bill of material based off of your need. So moving on to operator interface, these are the 800K line of product. They're IP69 rated, so designed for really caustic areas. They have no crevices, so no bacteria catch points. So they can be, they can go through high temperature, high pressure watchdown. We have these in both 22 and 30 millimeter options and 316 stainless steel. If you want, you can get these custom engraved on the face of the device to read whatever you want. And finally, we have the 70 millimeter stack light option. These have been out for a little bit, but they're starting to pick up a little bit more steam. You can have up to 7 modules in a stack, and they're all LED. They have really high lumen output per watt, so they're really efficient. And you can really create these in any configuration you want. You can buy them as components or as pre-assembled units. And they also have sounders, which are can either be top mounted or inline. And there are various mounting base options as well. So now I will pass it off to Donna Wyatt for the connectivity and sensors portion of this presentation.
You might be muted there, Donna.
Yikes, sorry. My name's Donna Wyatt. I normally work out of the Malvern office. My areas are Delaware and Chester County in PA, the state of Delaware, and Cecil County in Maryland. So I'll be going over these push-in terminal blocks and some new sensors. The 1492P push-in terminal block, in case somebody doesn't know what a push-in terminal block is, it can accept ferruled wire or solid wire directly into the block without the use of tools. If you're using stranded wire, you would have to pull the actuator back and insert the wire. Just as if you want to take the wires out, you would pull the actuator back with a screwdriver and take the wire out. We'll go into a little more detail. So the push-in terminal blocks does reduce wiring time greatly. The wire sizes currently are 26 to 6 gauge, 10 to 62 amps in 10 colors, single and multi-level blocks up to 4 levels, and the various specialty blocks such as disconnects, fuse blocks, power and distribution and control, sensor and signal blocks. They're also ATEX rated, and we do stock them in Rumsey. Rockwell's connection systems, they have a full line of connection systems that we also stock at Rumsey. The cord sets, the patch cords, the cable splitters, the Y cables, field detachable, passive distribution boxes of every sort that you could want. And we also have a full line of Ethernet cables and patch cords also in stock at Rumsey. The wiring systems is a huge time saver when you're wiring inside your panel, I/O, wiring analog and digital to your PLC. And we have them available for all the various PLCs, and those are also stocked at Rumsey. Sensor selection tool is on the Rockwell website. I have the link there. And this is a great little tool that Rockwell developed. If you're not familiar with Rockwell sensors, or you're not overly familiar with sensors in general, you could go to this tool. And I just captured one page of the Could you go back a second? I only captured one page of the tool here, and I selected milk jug, but there's like 3 or 4 pages of applications. And I think there's about 270 different applications you can choose. So as I said, I selected milk jug. And on the milk jug, you can take a look at the presence. You can look for the label, the fill level, and the cap presence or color. And with that, Rockwell will give you some selections. And there could be 4 or 5 different options depending on how many boxes you clicked for the application. So it's a real good tool. If you could take a few moments at some point and take a look at it, it really is a good little tool. Or of course, you can always call a sensor specialist at Rumsey for help. So now I'll be going into the new sensors. The 42AF high-powered M30 photoelectric sensor is IO-Link capable, and you're going to get sick of me saying that things are IO-Link capable. The reason why I wanted to point this out is Rockwell developed standard sensor with the IO-Link capability built in at no additional cost, no additional special part numbers. So you're getting an off-the-shelf sensor with IO-Link capabilities. In the case of the 42AF, it's a 30mm nose mount and an 18mm base mount. It's both IP67 and IP69K fully sealed, AC and DC voltages, NPN, PNP, and single pole double throw relay output. Currently, the option sensing modes are background suppression, background reflection, transmitted beam, and polarized retro. And in the near future, Rockwell will be coming out with sharp cutoff. And as far as application goes, with a general purpose high-powered sensor like this, there's thousands of applications, but I just picked some food and beverage car wash system it's great for. Airport logistics are looking at anything on a conveyor, balers and trash compactors, so look and see what's coming down the chute. The 46 DFA DIN rail fiber optic amplifier, once again, IO-Link capable. The standard response times are 50 and 500 microseconds as a default, but you can extend out the output to 4 milliseconds or 32 milliseconds. It has a built-in totalizer, a low margin alarm, 2 high visibility displays for setup and feedback, and a teachable red LED for intensity levels, so you can sense small objects or clear or transparent objects. And it uses both plastic and glass fiber optics. And fiber optics, as you well know, it's great for small parts detection, vibratory bowl feeders, and liquid level and also transparent objects. The 46 CLR True Color Sensor is a true red-green color value and intensity sensor when you use an IO link. It has a distance correction for consistent color detection. Anybody that's used color sensor knows they are so sensitive to the distance to the object. But with this correction factor, when you use IO link, it makes it a lot easier to sense your distance from the color that you're sensing. It has an internal storage up to 7 colors when you're using operating color match mode, or unlimited colors that you can save using IO link. It has a large LCD display, 9 adjustable tolerance levels, and 3 discrete outputs, and it's IP6769. And some of the applications I picked down here, of course, are food and beverage, to look at your cap, and pharmaceuticals, because you don't want a red vial in the midst of all the blue vials. But grading and color measurement is always a tough one for color sensors when you're looking at various hues of blue or discrepancies in a red bottle. This will help you pick it up because it is a true color sensor. And what I thought was kind of unique was the salmon application, where you don't want a dark piece of salmon going to the customer if it's not supposed to be dark. So it'll kick that out. So it's color grading also. The 873P ultrasonic sensor is an upgrade from the current 873P sensors. It is IO link capable, up to 6 meters sensing range, analog and digital output, but it has some unique functions that brings to a standard ultrasonic sensor when you're using IO link. Next slide, please. So if you're using IO link, some of the tough things for an ultrasonic sensor is when you're using a narrow vessel. That sound beam will hit the walls of the vessel the further away you go from the sensor. So this, with IO link, you can adjust that sound beam. We used to use like a cardboard cone to narrow the beam and kind of play with the sensitivity to filter out the cone, but IO link will narrow that beam for you. Another problem with ultrasonics in fill detection or liquid level detection is a turbulent surface. With the adjustable hysteresis of the IO link, you can adjust out that turbulence. And then you can also teach the sensor a fixed reflective surface. The 875L capacitive proximity switch will be IO link enabled capacitive prox, and it will be out in December. It's IP69K, available on both digital and analog output. And just as any capacitive prox, you can use it for thickness. You can look through a plastic hopper to see plastic pellets behind it because you can filter out the hopper itself. So it's a IO link capable sensor with all the various applications that you can use for a capacitive prox. The 48CR code reader is a small high-performance code reader. It reads barcodes and QR codes. It can even read
sorry, I was actually just called.
Okay, sorry about that. The 48CR code reader can read both barcodes and CR codes, and it can also read damage codes. It is supports Ethernet IP, configured with either Studio 5000 add-on profiles or something that's called Web Connect, or a combination of both. So if you're using Web Connect, it allows you to easily configure the sensor with no additional software needed. Its ranges are 102 to 400 millimeters, and the speeds are 60 feet per second in fixed focus models or 42 feet per second in autofocus models. The Swifty 3D sensor is manufactured by a company called Odos, which Rockwell purchased about 3 years ago. And this is just a little thing here where you have a laser measurement sensor that's only one single beam. The Swifty 3D has over 300,000 beams. So you can use that to measure pretty accurately. And a lot of our competitors don't have anywhere near that number of beams. The Swifty is a 3D time of flight technology, which allows for reliable sensing and height measurement. So it's Ethernet compatible and Studio 5000 with Studio 5000 add-on profiles. It can store up to 255 templates with 64 virtual sensing zones in each template. It's great for height and distance measurements, for robotic palletizing, where maybe the robot placed a box on there facing the wrong way. Case packaging inspection, where you need to make sure that there's 6 items in a case and it'll sense that only 5 are in there and kick it out. And one other product is the 836P pressure, 837T temperature sensors. We stock these at Rumsey. They're 316 stainless IP67 enclosures, IO-Link capable, and both in display and non-display models. So that's all I have for you today. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to help you out.
All right. Well, with that, I appreciate everybody's time this afternoon, now that it's going into lunchtime. So I appreciate that. If there are any questions, feel free to reach out to your salesperson and or any of the specialists on this call. And hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.